welcome to episode 4 of Coffee and a Flat Cap, a series where I sit down with a cup of coffee and a flat cap on my head and I talk about mental health, more specifically ways and tips and tricks that you might be able to use and implement to improve your mental health that I've picked up in my own personal 14-year-long battle with several mental illnesses. So this is episode 4. If you want to see episodes 3 to 1, I'll leave a link in the description down below to the playlist. Feel free to check them out, but there's no worries if you don't want to. In today's episode, I would like to talk about being kind to yourself. I think it's quite important and I want to share a little bit about that. So if that sounds interesting, please feel free to stick around. So before we get into the bones of episode 4, I do want to point out that I am not a trained mental health professional. I am just an average Joe who is sharing tips and tricks and ways that I've picked up over my 14-year-long battle with mental illnesses, as I said in the intro, that have helped me with my mental health. And I want to share them to a wider audience in the hopes that it might improve other people's mental health. So without further ado, let's get into it. So personally, I think being kind to yourself is quite important. For example, I used to be quite I do apologise. I used to be quite self-deprecating, where if I would see a picture on my Facebook memories where I had really stupid hair, I would share it and say something like, "Oh, nice hair, idiot." And that really isn't good behaviour. Granted, it might be quite funny to some people, but you really got to weigh up whether being funny is more important than being kind to yourself. And I sort of took the route that I need to stop saying those things in order to be kind to myself. And also, it's not just stopping being self-deprecating to yourself. It's also taking care of yourself. You know, showering every day, you know, brushing your teeth every day, you know, just general looking after yourself. Granted, that can be listed under self-care, but I'm going to do an episode about that. But it's just really taking care of yourself and knowing when to stop doing things, I think is quite important. For example, I used to book days off work, weeks off work. If I was struggling, I would speak to my manager and say that I need to book a couple of days off work, and I would just use that time just to recuperate, just to have a couple of lie-ins in the mornings, and just to recharge my batteries, and just to, as I say, be kind to myself. And also being kind to yourself, it's not just looking after yourself. It could be treating yourself to something that you've seen in the shops that you really like. You can go and buy that. That's being kind to yourself. If you, I don't know, fancy a bar of chocolate, you can go to the shops. Obviously, got to be a bit careful with everything that's going on, but you could go to the shops, buy a bar of chocolate and treat yourself to that. That's being kind to yourself. It's just very important, I think, to be kind to yourself, especially if, like me, you suffer with depression. Some days you don't want to get out of bed, and being kind to yourself, to me, when I feel like I don't want to get out of bed, is actually getting out of bed. Because I know if I stay in bed all day, then I won't feel any better. Whereas if I get up and I have some sort of semblance of routine where I can get up and I can go for a walk to get a bit of fresh air, just to clear my mind a little bit. And that, to me, is being kind. That's being kind to yourself. It's being kind to me when I'm doing that. I think it's quite a broad thing, being kind to yourself. But I think it's very important, if you do have mental health problems, or you've got a mental illness, that it is quite important to be kind to yourself. And again, as I said earlier, being kind to yourself, it's not just washing every day and doing all these things. It can be changing things about you. You might notice I trimmed my beard off and left this chin, just left the chin hair. I wanted to see if I could grow a beard. I grew a beard, it didn't look that good if we're being honest. Trimmed it off and I left this. And that was me being kind to myself. And you could do the same if you wanted. You could get your hair cut, you could dye your hair. Obviously you want to be careful you don't end up on Brad Mondo, but so I guess what I'm trying to say is if you want to buy that pair of shoes you've seen, then buy the pair of shoes. And if you want to dye your hair, I don't know, turquoise, then dye your hair turquoise. It is all about being kind to yourself. I know that I've come to the decision I'm going to grow my hair long, and I shall probably dye it some funky colour, probably turquoise. And that's going to be my part of being kind to myself and partaking in a bit of self-care. So I hope some of what I've said in this video makes sense at least. And if I'm going to say it 1,000 times in this video anyway, I'm going to say it again. Be kind to yourself. So I'm going to go now and finish this coffee before it gets too cold, because I detest cold coffee. I hate everything it stands for. Anyway, that's been this episode of Coffee and a Flat Cap. And until the next time, have a very lovely day.